This is what China looked like in 1950s, a nation that recently adapted socialism. It was predominantly agrarian, with a largely rural population engaged in farming and traditional industries. The period before the 1970s in China was characterized by a nation grappling with internal and external challenges, seeking stability and striving to address economic and social disparities. However, today's China reflects a different picture. It is now the second largest economy in the entire world. China's contribution to global GDP has reached to 18%, which was 2.2% in 1980s, and it is expected to rise further in the future. Now China produces almost everything from consumer goods to high-tech smartphones, from EVs to nut bolts. In fact, the smart device in which you are currently watching this video is entirely or probably some parts of it are made in China. There are more and more countries who are calling China their main trading partner. But how China really gained such level of influence and called the factory of the world, let's find out. The real Chinese miracle started in 1978, after Deng Xiaoping came into power, who is also known as the father of modern China. Prior to that, China tried a number of economic and social experiments that were sort of beneficial for China to define its trajectory in the coming future. After facing 4-year-long devastating civil war, the communists came into power in 1949. During that time, the People's Republic of China was a very poor nation. The country's economy was heavily dependent on subsequent farming. In its efforts to industrialize itself, the supreme leader of China at that time, Mao Zedong, introduced the strategy of Great Leap Forward. The plan was to redistributing labor from large industrial complexes to small backyard factories in order to maximize steel production. But this proved to be disastrous for the nation, as millions of people died of starvation during that time. It is considered one of the greatest famine of all time the humanity has ever faced, with an estimated 15 to 55 million deaths. In 1966, Mao also launched the Cultural Revolution, aimed to eliminate the revisionists within the CCP, who were accused of deviating from the socialist path and restoring traditional, conservative values and practices. Some of these rightists included Liu Shaoqi, Deng Xiaoping, Peng Dehuai, Xi Jinping, and other highly ranked officials who had criticized or opposed Mao's policies. Schools and universities were shut, historic buildings destroyed, and anyone accused of being a rightist was imprisoned or killed. All of this continued to Mao's death in 1976. In 1977, China was at the start of its economic miracle. At this time, industrial and agricultural production rose to 10.7%, and steel production rose about 16%. Then, in 1978, the same Deng Xiaoping who was once accused of being the rightist became the supreme leader of CCP. He was considered the suspect due to its suggestions to introduce some capitalistic characteristics in the nation, to reduce the effects of famine, and to increase productivity in the sector of farming. Under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, China transformed from a poor country to a global economic powerhouse. He believed in that the country would only move forward by trial and error. Despite being the supreme leader of China, Deng admitted his lack of expertise and reached out to experts, unlike Mao, who was overconfident on his decisions. He also normalized the tensions between China and rest of the world. He was very inspired by China's other Asian peers, who were enjoying and saw their economies flourishing during the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. He applied the 3-step roadmap which was followed by South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan to develop their economies. China's secret weapon was its large population and its massive size. Each province was the size of an entire nation, which meant that Deng could run economic experiments locally before rolling things out at a national scale. China, who had been a founding member of the World Bank in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference, invited the institution back into the country and asked them to prepare a report on Chinese economy. After that, in 1981, China received its first loan from World Bank for development of higher education system. The fields of economics, law, and international relations were modernized. Deng determined that economic expertise would be critical in creating a successful socialist system to alleviate poverty. He began opening special economic zones, particularly in coastal cities. The gradual introduction of free market capitalism and allowing foreign investors to invest in China, which caused rapid development in the nation. New factories were set up which encouraged urbanization. China's urban population grew from 190 million in 1980 to over 300 million in 1990. As Beijing accumulated wealth, it started investing heavily in large infrastructure projects. It was the combination of highly developed infrastructure with low cost of labor that Western investors found irresistible, which resulted in an increase in foreign direct investment from zero in 1979 to $40 billion in 1997, peaking at $290 billion in 2013. The huge growth that was occurring in China was beginning to cause inflation, which socialists like to describe as capitalist disease. This caused tensions under CCP that it could lead to political instability. And in the mid-1980s, inflation reached over 12%, despite the fact that government was allocating 20% of the state budget on subsidies to keep goods affordable. In 1985, Hua Sheng, a young Chinese economist, came up with an idea which is known as the dual-track system, in order to move towards free market prices. Under this system, enterprises would have to meet planned quotas, and everything they produced to meet the quotas would still be sold at a state-set price. But beyond those quotas, enterprises could produce whatever quantities of goods they wanted, and sell them at whatever price consumers would pay. Under this system, some goods and services were subject to both state-set prices and market prices, creating opportunities for arbitrage and rent-seeking. It helped to increase factories' productions and was a major move for the nation to transition towards free market prices. In the summer of 1988, Deng Xiaoping finally ordered a sudden liberalization of the economy. The crisis emerged. A fear of inflation seized the country. During that time, the famous Tiananmen Square incident was happened. The protests were triggered by the death of Hu Yaobang, a former general secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, who was seen as a reformist leader. Students around China used this incident to organize protests against the CCP. On the 27th of April, students held up signs in Tiananmen Square reading, "Hello, Mr. Democracy." At the peak of the protests, it is estimated that around 1 million people assembled in the square. CCP then made the decision to use military force to clear the area, which led to clashes between military and civilians. Thousands of civilian casualties had been reported, and many soldiers also lost their lives. In 1992, Deng went on his southern tour. There, by visiting Shenzhen, he indicated that the economic policies of reform were not going to be abandoned. In 1993, the Chinese constitution was amended from saying, "The state practices planned economy on the basis of socialist public ownership," to "the state practices socialist market economy." Deng's reforms were now enshrined in Chinese constitution. In the months and years after this change, the new generation of reform-oriented leaders made large strides, achieving Deng's goal. Years without public appearances, Deng Xiaoping died in 1997, leaving behind its successful political legacy. But this story does not have a happy ending. Before further moving on, if you have watched this video so far, then please hit the like and subscribe button to support the channel. After that, throughout the first decade of 21st century, China grew at an immense pace. It was able to lift more than 800 million people out of poverty. The country was flourishing with foreign investments and rapid infrastructure development. All was going well until this man came to power.
The new Chinese leaders revealed. Led by President-in-waiting Xi Jinping, the 7 men file onto a stage in the Great Hall of the People.
Xi Jinping. Remember this guy, Xi Zhongxun, who was accused of being the rightist with Deng Xiaoping. He is the father of China's current ruler, Xi Jinping. It's astonishing that Mao killed Xi's entire family just because he considered that they will come in his way. But now, the same Xi is the supreme leader of China. Not one, not two. Xi became the ruler for the 3rd time in 2022, after getting rid of China's presidential term limit that restricted all his predecessors to 2 terms. The world has not seen a Chinese leader like Xi since Mao Zedong. Like Mao, Xi believes that rallying around a single figure is crucial to the survival of party. So as soon as Xi came to power, he started getting rid of people who are getting in his way. He filled vacant positions with his own supporters, who believes in Xi Jinping's ideology of having tight control over both the party and the military, unlike Deng Xiaoping, who normalized the collective leadership. In 2021, Xi introduced one of the most dramatic acts yet, To enforce his influence over the Chinese Communist Party, he introduced a third historic resolution that unified the party's ideology around one clear line of thinking. Xi Jinping thought.
It's the beginning of a new era in Chinese politics, the era of Xi Jinping thought.
Basically, it meant that Xi Jinping's ideas could no longer be challenged. Since his first term, the size of Chinese economy has more than doubled. Under his leadership, China's presence on the global scale has also grown. Xi promoted self-sufficiency, looking inward like the Mao did. He also started a massive anti-corruption campaign so that he can eliminate his rivals. Xi also cracked down on Chinese companies and placed government officials on the boards of some of the most successful firms. He wants full control over CCP, and now he kind of has it. China's current political situation depends upon its economy. If the economy performs well, then we can expect Xi to rise again in the next term. China under Xi's leadership adapted aggressive policies, such as threatening Taiwan, putting Muslim Uyghurs into re-education camps, and introducing the Belt and Road Initiative to counter the US influence. If Xi becomes the president again, we can expect rise in some huge political tensions between US and China. As China is about to become the next global superpower, there is another country who had this status long ago, but now, the sun of its empire has set down. And yes, we are talking about Britain. And if you want to know how Britain reached to this point to its glory days, click on the video to the right, and I will see you there.